There's a silent signal that Carl Jung believed could predict destruction long before it happens. He said over 70% of his most dangerous patients displayed this one psychological red flag. It doesn't appear as rage, manipulation, or violence. It hides behind politeness, charm, and even kindness. And yet, Jung claimed, when you see it, your only protection is to withdraw immediately. Because this warning sign doesn't shout, it whispers. It disguises itself as reason, concern, or even love. And that's why it's deadly. Today, I'll show you exactly what Jung discovered and how to recognize it before it destroys your peace of mind. It's not an obvious behavior or toxic attitude. It's something far more insidious. The moment someone begins projecting their shadow with total conviction, Jung realized that when people deny their darkness, they don't make it disappear. They send it outward. They assign their hidden traits, anger, jealousy, cruelty to others. They see enemies everywhere because they cannot face their own inner shadow. And here's what's terrifying. Modern neuroscience confirms Jung's intuition. When a person projects their shadow with conviction, their brain literally rewires itself to support the illusion. They aren't consciously lying. They actually believe their distorted version of reality. That's why these people are so persuasive. Their certainty feels authentic, because to them, it is. Jung called this the most dangerous psychological mechanism in human relationships. It can ruin reputations, destroy families, and drive people to breakdowns all without a single overt act of violence. You might think you're arguing with logic or defending your character, but you're actually trapped inside someone else's unconscious nightmare. In this series, you'll learn to spot Jung's 5 danger signals of shadow projection. You'll see how innocent misunderstandings can escalate into full-scale psychological warfare, and you'll understand why Jung believed awareness, not confrontations, your only protection. Because once you recognize this pattern, you can escape it. You'll know when to walk away. And most importantly, you'll stop taking responsibility for someone else's inner darkness. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn could save you years of emotional damage. Welcome to the psychology of the shadow. Let's begin. In 1913, Carl Jung met a patient who would permanently alter his understanding of human danger. At first glance, this man was everything society admires. Charming, polite, empathetic. He spoke with warmth and concern about everyone he knew. But something about him unsettled Jung. As Jung listened, he noticed a disturbing pattern. Every person the patient described as evil or manipulative shared one strange similarity. They all displayed the same traits the patient refused to see in himself. It was as if he'd drawn a circle around his own darkness and placed everyone else inside it. Jung realized the man wasn't simply misunderstanding people. He was projecting his shadow, the parts of himself he couldn't bear to acknowledge. But it went deeper. The patient didn't just accuse others. He believed, with absolute conviction, that his distorted view was the truth. Within 6 months, his life collapsed. He destroyed 3 relationships. He got 2 colleagues fired. He drove his own brother to a nervous breakdown. And through it all, he saw himself as the victim, innocent, misunderstood, and pure. Jung was horrified. He wasn't watching random chaos. He was witnessing a psychological mechanism at work. The man's unconscious was orchestrating destruction, while his conscious mind played the hero. This, Jung realized, was the essence of danger. Unconscious projection fused with unshakable conviction. But what makes it even more chilling is how modern neuroscience has confirmed Jung's insight. Research from Dr. Robert Sapolsky at Stanford shows that during intense projection, the brain's perception centers behave like they do in delusional states. In other words, the projector isn't pretending. Their brain literally alters what they see and believe. That's why these individuals are so convincing. They truly think they're right. Their sincerity disarms you. You start second-guessing yourself, and before you know it, you're trapped in their altered version of reality. Jung's patient became a living example of the mind's most dangerous trick when the psyche trades self-awareness for self-protection. It's not just madness, it's weaponized innocence. From that moment on, Jung devoted his work to mapping this dark territory. Because once projection begins, logic fails, compassion backfires, and the only safe response is distance. To understand how dangerous projection can become, you first need to understand what the shadow really is. Jung described the shadow as everything within us that we refuse to see or accept. Our jealousy, our aggression, our selfish motives, our need for control. All the impulses that contradict our image of being good, kind, or moral. Most people imagine they can suppress these traits forever, but the psyche doesn't delete what it hides. It projects it. Whatever we disown internally, we start to see externally, and we see it with startling conviction. The process begins subtly. Someone irritates you for no clear reason. You sense deceit, arrogance, or malice that isn't really there. That's the unconscious whispering. You're looking at your own reflection. Jung warned that shadow projection is not mere imagination, it's the mind's defense system trying to avoid pain. By accusing others, we protect our ego from facing its own contradictions, but in doing so, we trade self-knowledge for delusion. Modern neuroscience has revealed what Jung could only. When a person projects their shadow intensely, their brain's perception filters reorganize to fit the false narrative. They genuinely see distortion as truth. To them, the illusion becomes real. They're not acting. They're living inside a self-created hallucination of morality. This is why confronting a projector never works. They don't feel like they're lying. They feel enlightened. They see themselves as the only one awake in a world full of deceivers. Jung saw this in countless patients. He said the most dangerous moment wasn't when they became angry, but when they became absolutely certain, because certainty locks the shadow in place. Once a person believes their projection is objective truth, dialogue ends, reason fails, and relationships begin to disintegrate. Worse still, projection spreads. The conviction of one person infects others. It creates what Jung called a psychic contagion. Friends, co-workers, even entire families can fall under its spell. Soon, everyone sees the same distorted picture and the real target becomes the villain of someone else's dream. Projection isn't just psychological, it's social, it's viral, and once it takes root, escaping it requires awareness few people ever develop. Jung didn't just identify projection as a concept, he mapped its warning signs with clinical precision. He noticed that when projection becomes dangerous, it always follows a recognizable pattern, and once you know what to look for, you can spot it before it consumes your peace. Sign 1: absolute certainty about others' motives. The projector doesn't say, "I think you might be lying." They say, "You are lying." No doubt, no hesitation. They speak with the confidence of someone describing the weather. They claim to know your hidden thoughts better than you do. Sign 2: immunity to contradictory evidence. When you try to explain yourself, they twist your words. When you offer proof, they dismiss it. Their certainty grows stronger the more you defend yourself. Every attempt at reason becomes further evidence of your supposed guilt. Sign 3: emotional intensity disconnected from reality. They react with rage, despair, or moral outrage to things that seem trivial. Their emotion doesn't match the moment. That intensity isn't about you, it's about what they've buried within themselves. You're simply the screen their unconscious is using to project the film. Sign for the perpetual victim narrative. No matter the story, they always end up as the innocent one. Different people, same pattern. The world mistreats them, misunderstands them, betrays them, and yet, they never see how their own actions contribute to the chaos. Sign 5: recruitment behavior. This is where things turn truly dangerous. They begin trying to convince others to see you as they do. Often, it sounds like concern. "I'm worried about them. I think something's off." But behind the mask of care lies a campaign of persuasion. They want others to join their distorted reality. Jung warned that when you see these 5 signs together, you're no longer dealing with a misunderstanding. You're facing a psychological infection. Left unchecked, it escalates. Reputation collapses, relationships fracture, and the target, the one being projected upon, begins to doubt their own sanity. Recognizing these signs early isn't paranoia, it's self-protection. Because the moment you start defending yourself against someone's illusion, you've already stepped inside their story. Jung discovered that shadow projection doesn't explode all at once. It grows quietly, moving through predictable stages. Each step deepens the distortion, and by the time you recognize the final stage, it's usually too late to reverse the damage. Stage 1: subtle projection. It begins with small misreadings. They make slight accusations that don't fit your reality. You brush it off as misunderstanding. They seem harmless, maybe just sensitive, but the seed has been planted. Stage 2: conviction, crystallization. The misunderstanding hardens into belief. They stop saying maybe. They start saying always. No matter what you say, their perception doesn't shift. You start noticing their eyes hold certainty where curiosity used to live. Stage 3: reality distortion. Now, Everything you do is filtered through their projection. Neutral gestures become threats. Innocent words become manipulation. Every action you take reinforces their illusion. Logic dissolves, replaced by narrative. Stage 4. Social recruitment. They begin to share their concerns about you with others, not as gossip, but as worry. They sound thoughtful, even compassionate. But make no mistake, this is strategy. They're gathering allies to stabilize their false reality. Soon, people around you start acting distant, uncertain, or cold. Stage 5. Collective possession. Now, the projection is no longer personal, it's shared. Others begin to see you through the projector's lens. You're accused of motives you've never had. Your truth no longer matters because the group has accepted a shared illusion. You're trapped inside someone else's story. Stage 6. Systematic exclusion. The group reorganizes around the projection. You're subtly or openly removed. Conversations happen without you. Your reputation erodes. You're pushed out, isolated, and labeled exactly what the projector first imagined. The prophecy fulfills itself. Jung called this process psychic possession, a storm where an unconscious fantasy becomes collective reality. The tragedy is that the target often blames themselves, believing they caused the chaos. But in truth, they were simply chosen as the canvas for another's darkness. The only real protection is early recognition. If you sense the pattern forming, withdraw before stage 4. Because once a projection gains a crowd, no amount of truth can save you from the story others now believe. Jung discovered that not all danger comes from unconscious projection. Some of it comes from the exact opposite, ego inflation, where the shadow projector acts unconsciously. The inflated individual acts with radiant certainty. They are no longer just a person with opinions. They have become a symbol, the savior, the truth bearer, the enlightened one. Ego inflation is more seductive than shadow projection because it wears the mask of goodness. The inflated person doesn't seem cruel or chaotic. They appear wise, spiritual, moral, and confident. They believe they see truth others can't, and that conviction can draw entire groups into their orbit. Jung warned that inflation is one of the psyche's most dangerous states. When the ego identifies with something larger than itself, an archetype, a divine mission, a moral crusade, it loses balance. The person feels chosen, righteous, untouchable. Their inner humility collapses under the weight of imagined greatness. Unlike ordinary narcissists, inflated individuals often believe they're helping humanity. They preach compassion while unconsciously demanding obedience. They speak of light while refusing to face their own darkness, and their greatest danger lies in their moral certainty. They never doubt their motives. They interpret disagreement as evil. Questioning becomes resistance. Dissent becomes proof of corruption. They see themselves as healers battling ignorance, and anyone who disagrees becomes the enemy. Their charisma is magnetic, their confidence hypnotic. People follow them because conviction feels like truth. But Jung saw the trap. What looks like enlightenment is often possession by an archetype far too powerful for the human ego to handle. Inflation eventually collapses under its own weight. But before that collapse, the inflated person can cause devastating psychological harm. They divide communities. They destroy reputations in the name of righteousness. They weaponize morality without realizing they've become what they condemn. Jung wrote that the greater the light, the darker the shadow. The inflated individual's downfall begins the moment they mistake their personal beliefs for universal truth. Because the moment you become certain you are the light, you've already stepped into the darkness. True awareness, Jung said, doesn't proclaim itself. It questions itself. And only through humility can consciousness stay free from possession by its own righteousness. While ego inflation blinds people with their own light, another danger hides behind perfect masks. Jung called it complete identification with the persona. When the mask we show the world becomes our only identity, the person appears flawless, polite, balanced, always appropriate. They say the right things, wear the right expressions, and never reveal weakness. On the surface, they're the ideal colleague, friend, or leader, but underneath, there's nothing alive. Their humanity has been replaced by performance. They've traded authenticity for acceptance. Jung warned that the more perfect the persona, the more pressure builds in the unconscious. Because the shadow doesn't vanish when ignored, it gathers strength. Eventually, it erupts. The eruption is shocking because it contradicts the image they've worked so hard to protect. One moment, they're calm and kind. The next, They explode with fury, cruelty, or despair that seems to come from nowhere. This is the persona trap, a life so devoted to appearing good that all repressed darkness waits for a moment to break free. Jung described it as psychic pressure in a sealed container. The more tightly someone seals their flaws, the more violently they return. But even this isn't the final danger. There's a darker transformation, archetypal possession. This happens when a person's ego dissolves, and something vast and impersonal takes over. They stop being themselves, their tone changes, their eyes look different, they speak with unnatural authority, as if channeling something beyond them. Sometimes, they become the eternal victim, always suffering, always demanding rescue. Sometimes, they become the righteous warrior, convinced they're battling cosmic evil. Others become the divine parent, controlling everyone for their own good. In each case, the person believes they are acting from truth, but they're no longer an individual. They've become a vessel for archetypal energy, far too immense to integrate. Their certainty is unbreakable. Their influence is magnetic, and their capacity for destruction is enormous. Jung warned that archetypes contain both creation and chaos. The same energy that produces saints can produce fanatics. The savior becomes the persecutor. The healer becomes the tyrant. The light becomes the fire that burns everything it touches. Now that you've seen the patterns, the question is simple. How do you protect yourself from them? Jung's answer was surprisingly direct. He didn't recommend confrontation or persuasion. He recommended conscious withdrawal. The first step is trust your gut. If someone's version of you doesn't match your inner truth, believe your inner truth. Projection feels wrong because it is wrong. Your intuition is the first alarm bell of the unconscious. The second step is don't argue. Shadow projectors and inflated egos are immune to evidence. The more you try to defend yourself, the deeper you sink into their illusion. Every word you offer becomes more proof that they're right. The third step is limit what you share. Keep your personal life out of their reach. Everything you reveal can be twisted into new material for their narrative. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The fourth step is document reality. Keep track of conversations, messages, and events. Projection often comes with memory distortion. When the story gets rewritten, you'll need evidence of what actually happened. The fifth step is seek neutral perspective. Talk to people who know both sides. Reality, check your experience. The farther you are from the projection field, the clearer things look. And finally, withdraw when necessary. Some battles aren't meant to be fought, they're meant to be exited, Jung said. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. People who cannot do that will unconsciously make you carry what they can't face. Don't take that burden. Don't defend yourself against their illusion. Stand in your awareness and let their projection return to them. That clarity is your shield. Because once you can see what belongs to you and what doesn't, you're free. You've just learned the warning signs of projection, ego inflation, persona traps, and archetypal possession. You've seen how unconscious people recruit others into their private delusions. And most importantly, you now know how to step out of the storm before it consumes you. If you found this insight valuable, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs it. You're watching Psychology Insights, where awareness becomes your greatest protection. Stay conscious, stay free, and remember, the shadow loses power the moment you bring it to light.